Let's make some miniature Valentine's Day cakes from polymer clay. And welcome to my channel, Notorious Crafts, where I show you how you can hand make dollhouse miniatures. In this video, I will show you how you can make 3 different styles of miniature cakes, as well as these little tiny heart-shaped chocolates. The first cake that I'll show you how to make is this white and pink layered heart-shaped cake. Here are some of the supplies that I'm using. I have polymer clay and this heart-shaped metal cutter that I'm going to use to cut out the shape of the cake. And then I have this silicone mold with hearts in it that I'll use for the decoration on top. I start off by conditioning the clay and just warming it up in my hands and getting it ready to soften it up to put it through my clay pasta machine. I am also wearing gloves to protect my hands while working with the clay, since the clay can really dry out my hands, and if I will be working with darker colors, sometimes the dark color from the clay stains my hands as well. Now I am using the heart-shaped cutter to cut out a piece from the clay, and then once I'm done, I'm going to peel it off and place it onto the pink clay. Before I use the heart-shaped cutter again, I'm going to wipe off any of the white clay that got onto it. I'm using the heart cutter again to cut into the pink clay with the white heart on top of it. I found that this stacking method for each layer works the best for this type of cake where I want the layers to be visible on the outside of the cake and to be part of the decoration. I'm using my finger to smooth out any of the rough edges and to smooth the clay layers into each other. And now I'm repeating the same process onto the next white layer. A different method that I tried that didn't work was stacking the layers on top of each other first and then using the heart-shaped cutter to cut through all of the layers. That would cause the colors of the different layers to bleed through to all of the other layers, and I didn't get nice clean lines of the layers, so I'm gonna just continue this method of stacking the hearts on top of each other and then using the cutter. I decided to do one more layer of white clay as the base since I didn't think that the cake had enough height to it yet. I noticed that the top white layer of my cake had a little bit of dust in it, so I'm just using some rubbing alcohol and Q-tips to rub out the dust out of my white clay. And now it'll be ready to place in the oven to bake so that it can harden. While the cake is baking, I'm going to get started on making some of the decorations that are going to go on top of it. I am mixing red and white liquid clay to get pink, and I'm going to use this liquid clay to fill out some of the heart-shaped molds, and this will turn into the candy chocolate that's going to go on top of the cake. I bake the liquid clay in the mold and then let it cool. Now it is ready to take out of the mold and decorate the top of the cake. I'm using clay adhesive, also called bacon bond, to attach the hearts to the top of the cake and then baking it one final time. Here's the final result of my pink and white layer cake. I think the layers turned out really nice. I am using the white liquid clay to make some more miniature chocolates. I am filling up many different sizes of the hearts to have a large variety. The next cake that I am making is this red and white layer cake with hearts on the side. To get started, I conditioned my red clay and I'm now putting it through the clay pasta machine to flatten it out. I'm using this circle cutter to cut out some circles out of my clay and then I'll stack them on top of each other. I'm doing the same thing with the red clay, just cutting out some circles. I am stacking the red and white layers on top of each other, and I do not care if the layers outside of the cake are even, since it will get covered with a layer of red clay on the outside. I want this cake to have a lot of height to it, and I want it to be taller than the first cake that I made, so I am adding a lot of layers to it. And once I was done, I wrapped the entire outside of the cake in a layer of red clay. And then I smoothed out the edges where the clay met so that you can't see the seam. I used an X-Acto knife to gently cut into the cake and cut out a couple slices out of it. The different cake layers turned out really nice, and then I'm going to cut this one bigger piece into smaller slices. I'm using this metal clay tool to poke holes into the cake and to make it look like sponge and frosting. This process does take a while, so just be patient with it. I will also do the same thing to the 2 smaller cake slices. And now I'll bake these in the oven to harden. While the cake is baking, I'm going to make some white frosting that's going to go on the outside of the cake, so I put some white clay into my extruder. I'm using clay adhesive from the brand Sculpey to attach the white frosting that's going to go on top of the cake as well as the bottom. So I'm using a toothpick to gently apply it to where I'm going to attach the other piece of clay. Now I am attaching the frosting that's going to go to the bottom of the cake, and then I'll place it in the oven to bake. I'm using these miniature polymer clay hearts that I bought already pre-made, and I'm going to attach them to the outside of the cake as a decoration. I'm using some more of the clay adhesive and applying it in small dots to where the hearts are going to go. I am also using tweezers to carefully attach the mini hearts, and I am arranging them one at a time, altering between the different colors. Once all of the hearts are attached, I will place it in the oven for one final time to bake, and this will secure the hearts and make the adhesive harden. Here's the final result of the red cake, and I love how the mini hearts make it look like a really cute Valentine's Day cake. I also want to show you how much darker polymer clay gets after baking. This was the original clay that I used, and this is how much darker it looks after it has baked. Always buy clay in a much lighter color if you don't want the final result to be too dark. Next, I'll show you how to make these heart-shaped cakes with frosting on the edge. Using the liquid red polymer clay, I am filling up the large heart-shaped mold. I tapped the mold against the table until all of the air bubbles were gone, and then I placed the mold in the oven to bake. After taking the heart out of the mold, once it was hardened, I noticed that it didn't have a lot of height to it, so I decided to place it on top of some more clay and cut out a heart shape to give it some more height. I used some clay adhesive to attach the wet clay to the heart. To make the frosting that's going to go on the outer part of the cake, I used my clay extruder and extruded 2 strands of the white color. I'm twisting the 2 strands of clay together, and that's going to go on the outer rim of the cake, and the twisted effect is going to look like piped frosting. I'm adding some clay adhesive all around the rim of the very bottom base. And then I'm attaching the frosting all around it. I'm using my nails to gently push the clay into the rest of the base. This frosting is also covering up the layer of extra clay that I had to add to the base to give it some height. Once I'm done, I'll place it in the oven to bake and harden. I repeated the same process to make another version of this cake, but in a pink color. Here are how all of the miniature cakes turned out, as well as the miniature chocolates. I think that this red one is my favorite one that I made. I love the hearts on the side as a decoration and how all of the layers turned out. Let me know down below in the comments which one of these was your favorite. All of these were so much fun to make, and I hope that some of you are inspired to make these for your dollhouse miniatures as well. I also have the links to the supplies that I used down below in the description. I also have a Valentine's Day playlist on my channel that is underneath playlists, and I have many other videos with Valentine's Day themed miniatures that I made. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and happy crafting.